Hi, I'm Alicia Michelle, and as a trained and certified Christian mindset coach, I've helped hundreds of Christian women discover brain science based mindset tools to help them grow closer to God and break free from anxiety, perfectionism, people pleasing, and feeling like they're never enough. The Christian Mindset Coach is the award winning podcast that shows you how to use simple brain science principles and biblical truth to renew your mind for lasting confidence, joy, and peace. I'm so glad you're here. Grab a cozy spot and let's get started. Hello there. Welcome to today's episode of the Christian Mindset Coach with me, Alicia Michelle. Well, if you are in your 40s or beyond, you probably have noticed some things changing about your body, about even your mind. Just things begin to shift and change. And I think as part of that natural occurrence is this natural shift in what we talk about with other women and what we talk about with God. And we find that there are some questions that start coming up like, why is my body doing this? What is going on with me? And words like menopause, perimenopause, hormones, hot flashes, belly pooch, like things that we were like, whoa, this is what my mom talked about. We noticed them starting to happen to us. I saw this happening in the past couple of years. We've been part of a really great life group. It's a parent of teens life group. And it's been wonderful, it's, of course, to be a support through the teen stuff, but to also have other women who just are also going through some of these little, like, that's really interesting because I used to be able to do that. Now I can't kind of stuff that's happening in this season. So, some of these things that maybe you have noticed if you're in this season are, we have these up and down hormones. We have all kinds of craziness there. We might have negative thought patterns or just insecurities that maybe we haven't felt since we were teens. I know that has been surprising to me in the last few years. There's just like, why is it such an issue? Why am I obsessing about this? Or why am I worried about this? It kind of like reminds you of some stuff you dealt with in high school. Also, we find that our metabolism slows down. We find that we can't eat as much as we used to without still staying in the same, gene size or whatever. I think there's this stuff that happens in our bodies like that's different, of course, from men and women. We know this. My husband and I are finishing up a challenge. If you've ever heard of something called 75 Hard, it's a challenge that's kind of gone on around on the internet by this one internet person. And as part of the challenge, you work out twice a day, you drink a gallon of water, you read 10 pages of a nonfiction book, and you commit to taking a picture of yourself every day. But and you follow a diet. There's no sugar and there's no alcohol, and you follow some sort of diet. We follow a paleo diet. So I've noticed that, I am on day 60 today as I'm recording this, and I have not lost any weight, ladies. I'm like, what? The whole goal was to lose weight because honestly, I'm pretty happy with the weight that I'm at in terms of my body, but it was just strange because here's my husband over here. You know what I'm going to say, right? Losing like, oh, I lost another 5 pounds this week. And I'm just like, what? Like, you're not doing anything radically different from what I'm doing. But our bodies, whereas before, if I had done that, made these little changes in my diet or worked out twice a day, I would have seen some changes. Now, I do feel different in other areas, but my point is that as we age, I love that today's guest brings in this idea that it doesn't have to be a deficit. It doesn't have to be something that we're mad about with ourselves. We're not fighting against our own body or we're not fighting against God about it ultimately. That we can learn how to age. I mean, there's that old phrase, aging gracefully, but this guest today, Heather Creekmore, has turned that on its head and said, what if we could learn how to age gratefully? Gratefully, right? So, this is a 30-day devotional that she has that speaks to these issues of aging that we women in our late 40s, early 50s, 60s, kind of that whole era, some of the things we face. And she does it in such a great way where she helps us to feel seen and heard about these issues from this Christ centered perspective. But she speaks like a girlfriend who's like, girl, have you noticed XYZ, right? And she does it in a very humorous way, but it's not cliche and it's not cheesy. And ultimately, she brings in this appreciation truly of how our bodies can be respected and honored, even as we're making these changes, and how we can get into that mindset of being real about it's kind of frustrating, some of these things, but that it's also
an opportunity to lean into more of who God made us to be and that our value has not diminished. So I love this conversation I was able to have with Heather. To tell you a little bit about Heather, Heather Creekmore, she speaks hope through her books and her podcast, inspiring women to stop the treadmill of comparison and to start living in the depths of God's grace. Heather and her fighter pilot turned pastor husband, Eric, they have 4 children and they live in Austin. And you can learn more about Heather at comparedtowho.me. Now, we've had Heather on the podcast before for another body image book that she's put out. And so I would encourage you to check out the other episode we did with Heather. But this episode was so much fun to put together. As you'll hear from our conversation, we laughed, we were real, and we just had fun with this topic. So I pray that it encourages you. Here's that conversation with Heather. All right, Heather, welcome to our podcast today.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, as I was sharing in the introduction, I love this topic. I think this is so much fun to how you've presented it, because you've presented this topic of aging in a way that, we don't really want to talk about these things, but they're happening and they're going on all the time for us in this age. And yet we can still see God in it. So what inspired you first to write Aging Gratefully?
Oh, it's so funny. I mean, it's not, I wish I had this like amazing story, but my agent knew that there was a publisher looking for a book on aging in this like age range. And I was like, I think because I do body image work.
Right.
And so a part of what I talk to women about all the time is aging. I'm like, I think I could write that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I really knew what I was getting into, right? Like I had never heard of perimenopause. And I wrote it. So I was 47 when I wrote it. Okay. Because, the process. It takes a little while for it to come out. So it's been a couple years now.
Yeah.
And I had never heard of perimenopause. I thought like you just called that whole season of life menopause.
Right.
And so like I started researching and I think honestly, it's not like I aged like 10 years while writing the book. As I was learning so much about aging, I'm like, ooh, I didn't notice this.
You're like, great, I have to look forward to that too. Like that's coming. Oh my gosh.
Right. But it was a fun thing to dig into and really challenge myself. Because for me, I think probably that 47 mark was a significant mark in like, oh, wow, now aging is real. It is here, right? Before there were tremors, but the quake has come.
Oh yeah.
And so it was challenging myself. Can I really be grateful for that? Yeah. Can I find any shred of happiness in that? So, it was a good exercise for me.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So then you brought it up. So I got to ask you, what was the earthquake that made you realize, holy, like what is going on here? And I don't know if I like this. What was that for you?
Yeah. Hormones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and some like, I could not remember having like anxiety and swirling thoughts like that hadn't really been part of my story for a while. And all of a sudden I'm like, what is like, I am hung up on like irrational fears and then I was like, and I have almost 4 teenagers. My youngest is 12 and he's going to be 13 in a couple months. So I've got 4 teenagers. And it was like, one day I was like, oh wait, like I think I'm doing what they're doing.
Exactly.
We're the same.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I got to tell you, we are in a small group at our church that is called Parents of Teens.
Okay.
I cannot tell you how many times in our group, when the women, we like separate for prayer, we're always like, what was God thinking putting teens with us at the same time we're going through these perimenopause stuff? Like, this is just...
Right. I guess we were supposed to start at 12, Alicia.
I guess so, right? Yeah. I mean, it's not
later.
I don't know. Oh my gosh. Well, yeah. So that is definitely an issue. So what do you think is the thing that makes us fight aging so much in our culture?
Yeah, I think culture tells us that we're aging out of relevance, right? That your significance is lost as soon as you are old or look old, right? Those two things don't always have to be the same.
Right.
But, there's fear that you will be rejected. It's really, I think it's significance. Right? Is your purpose finished? Like, does anyone care what you have to say anymore? Like, especially some of the women, maybe even listen to this show who maybe just chose to stay home with kids and now are thinking about getting back to the workforce. It's like, can I even get a job?
Right.
I think
Like the
about the
who am I questions. Like,
right,
who am I
right,
now? What am I
right.
now?
So, it's there's a lot of and I'm not saying they're unfounded. It's not all in
Right.
our head. I
Right.
mean, culture really reinforces these messages that aging is bad.
Hmm.
Don't age or else. And I mean, for the most part, I think we also have to be kind of honest, intellectually honest, and realize that most of the people selling us that are people who are actually trying to sell us something. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's to their financial advantage if they tell us that aging is bad and we need to look younger by doing XYZ. And then, oh, here's what we have for you. Here's my credit card.
Yeah.
Thanks for helping me save my life.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
but I think the marketers' messages have trickled over. I mean, we're marketed to by each other now, right? That's what social media is. I market who I am to you. You market. I mean, so it really, it's spiraled
Yeah.
to these messages that I think most of us don't stop and challenge. We just accept
Hmm.
it. Oh, aging bad, must fight.
Yeah. There was an interesting thing you mentioned, and I don't remember which day of the devotional it was, but you talked about how Clairol completely changed. We're talking about the gray hair
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Like
yeah. The
they
gray scare.
completely changed the dialogue and culture around
Yep.
why we needed to not have gray hair anymore. Can you
Yeah.
share that story? Because that
Yes,
was
absolutely.
interesting to me.
That's one of my favorite things to talk about. So, you watch old movies or like look at pictures of old
Yes.
politicians, right? George Washington powdered his hair. You see
Mm,
British Parliament, they gray wigs, right? And so gray hair used to be kind of a universal sign of wisdom
mm,
and stature and trustworthiness, right? And that applied to women as well. And
right.
the only women who colored their hair in the 20s and 30s were harlots, like
Mm.
women who worked the night
Interesting.
shift. Let's put
Wow.
it like that.
Wow.
And in the 40s, Clairol figured out how to make an at-home hair color. And so by the 50s, they called it the gray scare, where they started marketing. So think about the 1950s, magazine marketing, newspaper
Right.
marketing,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of television marketing had begun, right? But it was, you don't want to be drab and gray. Like people are going to think you look lifeless and your marriage is going to be dull. And really, you're not going to be attractive anymore if you have gray hair. But it still took a while. It still took through the 50s and the 60s into the 70s when we're going to wash that gray right out of my hair.
Yes.
Right.
I
And then,
remember
but
that.
so then by the 80s and 90s,
Yeah.
right? So 70s, 80s, 90s would have been my like formative youth. Like it's normative
Mm-hmm.
to color
Oh,
your
yeah.
hair. If you don't color your hair, well, that's kind of countercultural, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's all because of marketing. I mean,
Mm.
totally marketing has convinced us that, you got to have that hair color in order to stay looking young.
Well, and recent marketing, it's not like
Mhm.
that happened 100 years ago. That happened within our parents' and grandparents' lifetime.
Right, right, right. It's a standard that
Yeah.
was set by a company that had something to sell us.
Wow.
And it worked.
Wow.
We've been convinced. What do we say? Oh, I've got a gray hair. Oh no, I've got a gray hair.
Yes.
Like we panic over this.
Yes.
And again, let me just be clear, right? There's nothing sinful about coloring your hair,
Right.
right? Like we're free to choose to do that or not do that, right? I don't think God's mad at us for coloring our hair. I think the problem that we have to really like dig into our hearts on is why am I doing it?
Yeah.
What is my motivation there? Is there some fear there related to the messages that I've heard from marketers?
Right. Yeah. Well, and you kind of bring up a point, but without bringing up a point, in that guys don't necessarily deal with this in the same way.
No, no,
So, what are your
no.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there are men who color their hair for sure. And, I've seen more of those commercials now. And I mean, goodness, in the last, 10, 20 years, there's so many more products now for hair
For
loss.
guys. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's a whole, like, pretty much new line of business.
But
They
I mean,
didn't.
just like in general, they don't
Yep.
seem like I cannot get my husband to put a cream on his face. I'm just like, mm-mm. Like,
Ex-
I remember my
actually
grandpa,
thought-
like he always had really rough hands. And I'm like, "Grandpa, put lotion on." He's like, "No, I like my rough hands." I'm
Yep.
just like, women
Yep.
are always like, "Oh, I got to put, like, why do you
Yep.
think that is? It's so interesting.
It's just the messages of culture, right? Men get to age and look distinguished. Women age and look old. I mean, I wish I knew why. It
I
is
know.
totally not fair.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but
Wow.
it's real.
Mm. So then you shared a little bit in the beginning about kind of your personal journey through this, but how has this all unfolded for you, especially in the last few years, like you said,
Yeah.
approaching the perimenopause stuff, and how has that influenced some of the chapters that you've created in this book?
Yeah. Well, I think this fits perfectly with what you talk about all the time, Alicia. It's mindset,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? Can you think of anything in your life that has gone better because you feared it and dreaded it?
Mm.
Right? Like nothing. Right?
True. Very
Nothing,
true. Yeah.
nothing is better because you were scared of it and like, oh no, this is gonna happen. Right. So there is a mental shift, I think, that can
Mm.
help us approach aging in a way that is healthier and more enjoyable for us because really, okay, there's only two choices, right? You either age or you're done.
Exactly.
Right?
You're
There's
right.
really a nicer way to put
Privilege
that.
to age,
But
though, and if you look at it from that standpoint, not everybody has the ability to age, you know?
right, right. And I think, especially as Christians, right? Like it's easy for us to be like, well, I need to be grateful for each day. And then at the same time be like, ooh, I hate what aging is doing to me.
Yeah, yeah,
And I,
yeah.
I think we need to shift our mindset around that.
Mm.
Aging is normal. Now, okay, God created our bodies to be perfect, and
Mhm.
sin robbed that from us.
Right.
Okay. So some of the signs of aging are because we live in a sinful, fallen world. And
Right.
because these bodies will not last forever, we're going to get new ones. But that's a reality that we need to face. These bodies will not last forever. So aging, we cannot avoid it. It is going to have an effect on us. If you think about it, like it's kind of funny. And again, this goes back to the cultural messages, right? Like when your 10-year-old is then 16 and you see the Facebook memory pictures come up, or, you realize they can't wear the same clothes they wore at 10. They're taller, they look
Yeah.
different, right? Like you expect aging in
From
childhood,
kids.
you expect aging in the
Yeah.
teen years. And then, okay, let's take that a little bit further. How many 20-year-olds do you know that are built the same way as 50-year-olds? They're
Mhm.
not,
Right.
right? How many 30-year-olds do you know that look like 70-year-olds? And, I used to say you could do a lineup of women and not
Mm.
show their skin and not show their faces and just look at body shape. And you
Yeah.
could probably do a pretty dang good job of figuring
Yeah.
out who is what age
Mm.
because bodies change.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And we could accept that maybe if Instagram didn't show me every other ad of how I can make sure my body wouldn't change. But it's just
Yeah.
reality. I mean, so I turned 50 this summer and
Congratulations.
oh, thank you.
I turn 50 next February, so
Oh,
I'm
well,
like,
yeah, right. You're
ring.
right in
Yes.
there. Right in there. But my friends and I are friends of various body types and body sizes. But it's funny, every single one of us is like, I have this thing called a belly pooch now.
Oh, yeah. The belly
And I
pooch.
work out the same way and I do the same things.
Yep.
But now I have this belly pooch. Where did this belly pooch come from? What is this belly pooch? And as I think about it and really talk to clients about the same topic, it's like, well, we have two options. We can either spend our lives trying to fight the belly pooch, right? Like I can obsess over the belly pooch. I can, starve myself and do all kinds of other unhealthy things because I have a belly pooch. Or I can say to myself, you know what? Maybe this is just part of being middle aged. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's the way God designed my body. And actually, to take that one step further, I actually listened to some experts who kind of take maybe an alternative approach to what's happening in menopause. And instead of calling it like a spare tire that you get at
Oh, what a
menopause,
horrible word, right?
they call it a life preserver.
Oh,
Because what's actually happening is because
wow.
you're losing estrogen, your
Okay.
body wants to store estrogen and it stores it right there because estrogen is protective for our vital organs. So
Huh.
your body has one goal for you to keep you alive.
Right.
And it's like, oh, losing estrogen, must keep, must save, protect heart, protect liver, protect lungs. And then when you think about it like that, it's like, oh, well, maybe that's not all that bad. Maybe that's actually kind of genius.
Mm.
But it's only
Okay.
because culture has told me that I should always have a flat stomach
Mm.
until I die that I'm scared about that. So it's just changing your mindset.
Alicia here. If you're tired of feeling never enough, I'm here to tell you you don't have to stay stuck in the exhaustion of perfectionism, people pleasing, or trying to prove yourself worthy. What if I told you there's a secret weapon for rewiring your mind to align with God's truth? The proven brain science tool that pro athletes have used for decades and that I've been using with hundreds of Christian women to break free from this idea of feeling never enough. I want to tell you all about it at this workshop. Break free from never enough. Yes, you can find healing from a lifetime of worry, of shame, and striving. Sign up for the Break Free from Never Enough workshop at vibrantchristianliving.com/mind. This workshop is absolutely free. Why wouldn't you join me? Pick a workshop time that works for you at vibrantchristianliving.com/mind.
It is. Well, just to go a little further with that topic about
Yeah.
the flat tummy, my daughter and I were part of a mother-daughter meeting with other mothers and daughters, like a Bible study, and the topic of body image came up, and we were talking about how, and it's been crossed and passed down to our daughters now. My daughter is 16, and this idea of a flat stomach can dictate if you feel skinny or fat in general. Like if my stomach's flat, phew, I'm good. But if my stomach is poofy at all, then the rest of me is just like overweight. And like, where did it come from? That
Right.
is so interesting. I was like, you feel that way too? She's like, oh yeah, no, that's how I feel too. And I'm like,
Right.
whoa.
Yeah. And I talk about that in my 40-day body image workbook because it's interesting. Like your stomach actually has the capacity to expand. And I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it was some like crazy amount of expansion that can happen when you're full. Right. And so it's a little disturbing to think about the reality that God made our bodies and especially our stomachs to be able to expand to digest food. And that means they get bigger and they go back and they get bigger and they go back. But the fact that we have demonized that,
Yeah.
right? And we don't want to eat too much because I don't wake up tomorrow morning and my stomach might still be big. When the reality is maybe your stomach's just digesting that food to break it
Yeah.
down for nutrients to use
Right.
throughout your body because that's what keeps you alive. Right. Like it's disturbing that our
Yeah.
standard is really kind of coming from a disordered eating
Mm.
eating disorder perspective. So yeah, but it's
interesting.
a real thing. It is a real thing.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to some of the chapters in this book because they're days. It's a devotional, 30-day devotional. I was curious what would be your top 3 favorites that whether they were fun to write or they had a great story in them or do you think they're an important topic? What would those be for you?
Yeah. So number one is probably The Hottest Woman I Know, but I think you're going to say that one too. So we
That
can
was
save
my
that one.
favorite. Yeah.
Well, let's save that one. I would love to talk about Sandwiched.
Oh, okay. Tell me about that one. I don't know if I remember that one. Oh, yes.
Well,
Sandwich, the generations.
yes.
Yes,
Yes,
that's an important
because
one. Yeah.
that's my story right
Mhm,
now.
mhm.
Aging parents and teenagers.
Yes.
And we're filling out college applications and we're learning to drive and we've got 1,001 activities. And then I've got parents that have doctor's appointments and my parents aren't even close, but
Mm,
still trying to, navigate helping them. And, I lost my grandparents, my kids' great grandparents. I lost my grandparents not that long ago. So they lived well into their 90s,
yeah.
but even still kind of cleaning up the aftermath of that to help my parents with that.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. It's
Mm.
and then, depending on, where you're at in life, but for me, it's like trying to also sustain a career of some sort
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
all of that. And it,
Yeah.
feeling like your life is not your own.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is like, as young moms, we're like, okay, I'm dedicated. I'm giving all this energy to raise our kids to this teen time. And then you're thinking about empty nest. And then all of a sudden you're like, now my mom is moving in and now my father-in-law needs extra care. Speaking hypothetically, it's not my situation personally, but
Right.
yeah, that starts happening where you're like, so where was this space where I was going to go do this thing or, whatever.
Right.
It's just this weird, I mean, God allows us to live for him in every season. Of course,
Right.
we're saying that, but
Right.
it is this very strange mix
Yeah.
of both sides of life that we're faced with in this season.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, there's definitely grace for it. And I've
Mm.
sensed that grace. I've felt that grace. But it is like I think with teenagers, the end,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, of course, they're going to
Yeah.
still need you when they go to college, but you're like, there's a clock. And you're like, okay, 18, 19, 17, 18, 19. Like, you're probably going to move on and go do something else. Or even if you stay here, you're not going to be as dependent on me.
Right.
You're going to be an
Yeah.
adult.
Right.
But then it happens in just the exact opposite way with your parents. It's like, oh no, the clock is running like in the opposite direction where you're becoming more dependent on me and more dependent on me.
So
And I
interesting.
don't know when the clock was like, no idea. Is this going to be 10 years? Is this going to be 20 years? Like,
Yeah.
how long is this season going to be? And it can be overwhelming.
Mm. Yes, definitely. All right. So we both agreed the hottest person I know, menopause and midlife change, was our one of the top ones. The
Uh-huh.
sandwiched one. Any others that you felt like were fun to write or had an important topic to mention?
I loved writing, and I actually forget the name of it, but oh goodness, what was it called? Let me just share the story. It might have been it's Who Stole My Energy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I share the story of committing to something, committing to bringing bars for a school event
Okay.
and
Like
utterly
snack
failing.
bars, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff?
like cookie
Okay.
bars,
Yeah, yeah,
lemon
yeah.
bars or, brownies or something. You could sign up for cookies or bars. And I'm like, bars, that sounds easier. You don't have to
Yeah.
put them in the oven twice. And I sign up for bars and I just can't do it. Like, I have no capacity to make the bars. And, I'm like, my head is riddling around, like, do I need to go to the store and buy some bars? But it's like 9 o'clock at night when I realize this. And I have to show up the next day without those dang bars.
Oh.
And, it was a great lesson for me though, Alicia. Well, first of all, I should have just said no. Like, I knew I didn't have the capacity. And so the lesson for me is like, I'm getting old enough to say no now. Like, okay, Heather, like, this is a good reminder. You either say no or you're gonna fail.
Yeah.
You don't have the
Yes.
capacity. So
Yeah.
that was helpful. But then also just like understanding that as I age, my yeses and my nos are so much more important.
Yeah.
Because, like we
Yeah.
said, I've already got responsibilities with parents and responsibilities with kids. But like, wow, like it is time to grow up. This is me talking to me right now. It is time to grow up and really make sure that I am like just leaning into, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do here? No, they're asking me to volunteer. I know everyone will be happy with me if I just say yes and suck it up and do the thing. But
Yeah.
that might not be the best use of my time
Mhm.
and energy. I mean, because let's be honest, I just don't have as much energy as I used to have.
Right.
And so I can pour my energy into every single like opportunity that comes my way, but then I'm not going to have anything left for what matters. So really embracing the season of this needs to be no or yes, and I need to be clear on why and what that's going to cost me.
For sure. I think one of the graces that comes, at least I've found it in my life and several of my just personal friends too, like one of the graces that comes when you get to your 40s, especially, and I'm guessing it's going to continue in my 50s, is this idea of just like, I really am sloughing off the idea of having to impress other people and
Right.
caring what they think. I mean, in a way that those things, you do them, even for me, doing the mindset work behind it, but it's almost just like, I really don't care what you think. I
Right.
really don't care. And this is what God wants me to do. And that's it. Goodbye. And in a way that really is a great partner for what exactly
Yeah.
you just talked about,
Yeah.
because we need that extra oomph from God to really make every moment count with
Right.
the limited energy and the
Right.
extra responsibilities.
Right. Right. Or believing that there's like extra points for doing it all.
Yes.
Like, that's been a big one
Yeah.
for me. It's like, "Oh, wait,
Yeah.
like, no one's rewarding me for being
Right.
trying to be superwoman
Yeah.
or being the martyr who's gonna do it all." Like, neither one of those are healthy
Mm-mm.
mindsets. Like,
Mm-mm.
there's no prize for that
Nope.
here
Yeah.
or in heaven. Right?
Nope.
So why am I doing this again? Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you nailed it, right? It's people pleasing,
It is.
but really, changing your mindset around that, I think, yeah, that's important.
Yeah, there's a freedom that comes. And I think one of the things that is the ultimate freedom that you weave through every chapter in this book is the idea of gratitude. You alluded
Mhm.
to that in the beginning of our talk here, but just why do you think this really is the linchpin that makes it easier to age and to age with a partnership with God versus raising our fists in the air at Him for
Yeah.
cursing our bodies like this.
Yeah, because the joy of the Lord is our strength, right? You know, I've got all the cliches about gratitude running through my head right now. But gratitude really is a posture where I am able to say to God, like, no, you're in control. You're the one I worship. I mean, I think of the Brandon Lake song, Gratitude,
Mhm.
I've got nothing that's fit for a king.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when I'm tempted to get spun up over, oh, my imaging, oh, I don't like the way this looks. Oh, I wish this was different. I I need to just chill out.
Yeah.
Like, wait a second here. This is not about me.
Mm.
It's not about me. Like, and every time I try to make my life about me, I become miserable. It's
Yes.
only when I can
Yes.
be grateful, like, and like we said earlier, like, thank you, God, that you did give me another day.
Yeah.
And what is your purpose for that day?
Right.
And is your purpose going to be thwarted because I have a couple more gray hairs or a whole head of gray hair? Is your purpose going to be thwarted because I've got all these extra lines on my face or or
Yes.
on my thighs or
Right.
wherever
Yeah.
those dimples are, right? Like, no, like you still have something for me to do. Show
Mhm.
me what that is. And I think when our hearts are grateful,
Mm.
we're no longer, I've written about comparison in the past. Right? When we have grateful hearts, our tendency to compare diminishes
Right.
because I'm not looking at life through the lens of, has God cheated me? Like,
Mhm.
why does she have it better than I do? Why does she have it better than I do? No, I'm like, just thank you, Lord, for what you've given me. Thank you for your
Yeah.
grace.
Right.
Thank you, not just for your saving grace, but thank you for the grace of your gifts and the grace like that you give me in every day in every way. And I'm so focused on that grace. And my grateful heart makes everything more pleasant.
Right.
And it squashes the
Mm.
comparison. And it squashes, that bad attitude that wants to, put me at a place where I'm really angry about aging
Yeah.
sometimes.
No, I agree. And I love that that is the heartbeat behind this book and that you do a really good job of walking the line between being honest about, this stinks that we going on and also praising God and being grateful for what he gives us in every
Yeah.
aspect of living and adding humor in the way. So I just wanted to commend you for doing that because that's
Yeah.
not an easy line to toe, and that this book is good about doing that without sounding cliche or cutesy. And sometimes some of these, we can be in some of our rhetoric with Christianity. So
Yeah.
how
Thank
can
you.
listeners learn more about this book and get in touch with what you're doing to help women
Yeah.
with body image?
All the things are at improveBodyImage.com.
Hmm.
So my podcast, my book coaching, all the things are there. And I do work with women one-on-one. So like anyone who's really stuck in aging or body image issues, we can work together.
Great. And tell us the name again of your podcast.
My podcast is called Compared to Who.
I thought, yeah. Okay,
Yep.
great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Heather, thank you so much for being on here with
Oh,
us today. This was awesome.
thanks so much for having me, Alicia. It was great to be with you.
Okay, that was so much fun. I have known Heather for a while, and I love again that she has a calling to speak to women about these things that maybe we tend to rail against God about, or we tend to be secretly mad at ourselves over, and we're constantly fighting. But she has this great knack of being able to help us honestly admit them, but still release them in a way that draws us closer to Christ and grows us for, what he wants us to do in this season. So totally check out her book. It's called Aging Gratefully, and you can find it anywhere where books are sold. So that is a great resource to get started. It's a great read. It's 30 devotional days. So the devotionals are super short, and there's a little gratitude action that she has at the end of every day. And whether you go through and kind of cherry pick the topics that relate to you, or you just do it for 30 days, or grab a girlfriend and do it together, it's a great little study. Also, I wanted to mention that if you are entering a new season, maybe because of some life changes that are happening due to aging, this is something I love helping women work through in the Onward and Upward Collective. And so if you are interested in having a community of women around you who are wanting to make changes or needing to move with changes that are just happening in your life, a transition maybe, or you're setting a goal and you're like, finally, I'm able to do this. This is where I wanted to go and God's leading me. You want some encouragement and support and accountability around what does it take to work through the obstacles that we feel in these areas. That's what the Onward and Upward Collective is all about. So we face those obstacles. How do they come up? How do we work through them from God's word? Just using journaling questions, teaching time together, accountability, encouragement. It's a great, great support. And so you can learn more about that at vibrantchristianliving.com/collective. So if you're looking for someone to work with you or to walk with you through these seasons and these changes, I would love to talk with you more about if the Onward and Upward Collective is a good fit for you. All right, friend, if this was an encouraging episode, would you share it with someone you know? Share it with another mom or another woman who is also walking through this season of change in life and menopause and all the good stuff. And if this also encouraged you, would you also leave a rating and review? 5 stars if we've earned it on Apple Podcasts, if that's your favorite way to listen or whatever platform you listen to. This really encourages me and the rest of the podcast team, and it lets other people know just how the podcast can be helpful for them. So thanks in advance for doing that. And I appreciate each of you, and I appreciate that you show up every week and listen to these episodes. If you have any comments or feedback ever, you can always reach out to me at hello@vibrantchristianliving.com. And I would love to hear just how these things resonate with you. All right? So take care. I look forward to seeing you back here for next week's episode.
Thanks for joining me today for the Christian Mindset Coach. If you loved today's show, would you take 2 seconds and share a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts? I've got a special gift for you when you share a review, my amazing 50 I Am declarations, 50 statements and Bible verses about who you are in Christ. This is an audio meditation and a written statement that is extremely popular with my clients, and I want to give you access just for sharing your Apple Podcast review. Simply screenshot your review and send it to hello@vibrantchristianliving.com, and we'll send you the link to access the 50 I Am Declarations resource. Thanks so much for sharing your rating and review so that we can get the word out about the podcast. See you back here next week.